YouTube. The clickbait title of this thing is like, I don't know what we're gonna say. 350Z or like JZX JZ car kind of thing. Anyways, so he has a WiseFab 350Z with a stock DE motor, super reliable car. It works fantastic in Texas street legal, and he has an IS300 1JZ like screamer car that sounds amazing, all stanced out, looks rad. Please tell me about the difference between the two cars. Which one works better on track for comp and having fun and like, you know, this and that. Which you prefer to drive, because it looks like you prefer to drive this. So tell the audience stuff real quickly, because from their perspective, they look at the two cars, because I'll put up pictures of both of them, and I think most people would prefer the IS. And they would absolutely be like, oh, that's JZ, that's the best, it makes more power, it's not the VQ. But in reality, how much work was each car, you know, for each minute on track, and just kind of explain the differences and stuff.
So right now it is, I don't even know what the date is, like March something or February, early February, right? And round 4 was in July or August. The only thing I've done to that car since then was an oil change, right? So this car, I can do a full season Texas street legal and touch nothing but oil changes and put tires on it. It drives very well, it grips well, it steers well, has lots of angle. It requires nothing to work. It never really lets me down, ever. And then, but I mean, it's a Z, right? So it doesn't sound very good. You can only do so much to make them look good. To a point, they're almost getting boring to drive because everybody has them. So you're tandeming people that are in the exact same car. So there's no real challenge to like keep up or like anything like that. So the only way I get really challenged driving this car is if I drive like Pro-Am events or something. But at that point, it is a DE, so it only makes like 240 wheel horsepower. So it gets gapped by all the Pro-Am cars. So then it's not fun to drive with them either. So it's in like this weird middle ground of like too easy to drive, but not fast enough to drive with more interesting people, if that makes sense. Whereas the Lexus was a JZ car. It made just under 300 wheel horsepower. It was a bone stock 1J with just a tune and like a full exhaust and stuff, and that was kind of it. So I put more money into that car in 3 months of ownership than I have in this car in 2 years of ownership, just to try and make it almost as good as this car. So basically the problem I had with that car was the steering was real weird. It was really fun to drive because turbo cars I like a lot, but the steering was really odd. The car never felt like it was gripping very well, and it overheated all the time. Every event I was putting probably 10 hours in between rounds to make it work again. It was just always having a bunch of little stupid problems. If you get that set up and you get it dialed really well, it would probably be more enjoyable to drive. But after driving this car and driving a few others, I've never driven a car that is as dialed as that car. Like, it does everything you want it to do all the time. It never does anything weird, whereas the Lexus was just kind of janky.
So you say more fun, and that's because turbo noises and other things, but at the same time, I'm hearing that in my mind, this is more fun because this is on track all the time.
Yeah,
and it takes less time to work on and less effort.
I guess what I mean by more fun is like, so like I said, this car does exactly what you think it's going to do all the time. So you can almost drive it like in your sleep, whereas the Lexus was challenging. So like, it was a turbo car, so you had to worry
because
about
you're struggling
rev range. It's hard to drive. It was more fun because it was bad.
Right. So I've had some cars like the Tyler Cox Memorial car when I put a V8 in it, and my old V8 car. I had some drift cars that were so easy to tandem in and so reliable and so everything. I would get bored with them, and then I would go back to a turbo car, and then I would hate myself. I would hate myself. And I'm like, why do I do this to myself?
Yeah, so I was basically bringing 2 Texas street legal cars to every round because I really wanted to drive the Lexus, but it never stayed reliable for a whole event. So I would end up just reverting back to this car and driving.
So did you get rid of it?
Yeah, I traded it.
For what?
It's a secret.
Oh, okay. So what's the moral of this story?
The moral of the story is, it just kind of depends what drifting means to you. Like, if you want to be like unique and have something that people look at as like, oh wow, like I really want that, maybe the Lexus. But if you go a route like that where you get something that's swapped and not as simple as a car like that, just know you're going to spend more money, more time, and get less seat time and have less fun on track.
What was the specific things on the Lexus that cost you so much money and took so much time?
I just spent so much time like messing with suspension setups. Like, I had to buy multiple sets of arms to get camber to 0, which is a big deal to me. The angle setup just never felt right, so I went through a couple different versions. I put really nice coilovers on to try to get it to grip well and drift. It was blowing it blew 2 radiators. It's just like the car always overheated. It never stopped, and it just always seemed like every time I drove it, something weird broke. And then like it had a W55 and it blew up instantly. So most people just put like an R154 in it, but those are getting so expensive. I did an AR5 swap, which is out of a Pontiac Solstice or like a Chevy Colorado, which is R154 internals in a much cheaper body basically. Yeah, like $600.
Yep.
But that swap cost me like $400.
Yeah.
It's just so hard to get all the parts. Like by the time I had the car, like got rid of it, it was like 70% as good as that.
Yeah.
But
you didn't want to see it
100% more work.
Okay, makes sense.
It's just I got an offer I couldn't refuse basically.
Yeah. And you've been driving this thing for quite some time.
Yeah.
Are you ready to step up to a Pro-Am type car? By the way, when we say Pro-Am, it's just like a word now in Texas. It's not even like Formula D program.
Yeah.
Pro-Am, it's just like whatever. Do you want a V8 car? Do you think about swapping that to V8? Because the moment you swap that to V8,
that car's never
reliability is
anything but a VQ in it. Okay. That car will always be just as it is. It's just too reliable. But yeah, I would love to get into something faster. I want to do like Lone Star Drift Series Pro-Am, whatever you want to call it. I want to do like clutch kickers. I want to go like grid life, that kind of stuff.
So you need a crazier car for that.
Yeah, I really want to. The thing I want to do is I want to see where I stack up as a driver against like some of the best guys out there.
Have you driven a bunch of like crazy cars yet?
The craziest car I've driven? Do you know who Brian Rutan is?
Yeah.
He has a JZ S13. He makes like 600 wheel. At round whatever the shootout event was. During the shootout, I just went to like the little figure 8 thing and drove around over there.
So that's the only crazy car you've ever driven?
That's the craziest thing I've ever driven. I didn't really even get to drive it. It was just like figure 8s.
The last closing thought I would say on this whole thing is, you're a person that you might not realize it. You do a lot of simulator driving too, right?
Yeah, that's right.
People like yourself that have these cars, sometimes I don't think the cars get enough credit for making you the driver you are and the simulator time and stuff.
Yeah.
But you've become a really, really, really good driver. And if you had started off with that Lexus JZ car, I don't think you would have gotten to that point. Because you would have struggled and everything. This car has done so much for you. It is so good.
Yeah.
Saved you so much money, allowed you to get so much crazy seat time and make tiny, small, delicate adjustments instead of just like swapping engines and cranks in between events and stuff or in the parking lot.
I will say, like,
it's good.
I would suggest anybody go through Assetto Corsa before they go.
JZ car?
Not really.
Okay.
I don't want another one. But like, I would say if anybody wants to get into drifting, Assetto is the place to start. Like in 2019, I won round 2.
Yeah.
That was my 4th tandem event.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I had barely driven prior to that. But Assetto, if you get like a good setup and you dial it in pretty well, it translates so well to real life.
So many drivers like fielding, oh, it feels nothing like real life. You're like, shut up, nerd.
It's just because you don't have like the G-forces on your body, but the actual inputs are almost identical.
And you're going to some of those tracks. Some of the tracks aren't exact either, but you know, like you know where to, shift. You know where to do things. You just know the track so well by the time.
Yeah,
you
like
get there.
I came out to like Police Academy, for example, which has a horrible online version, but
you still got it.
You knew the idea, and first lap out, I was good to go.
Yeah,
it's very useful.
Okay, well, I think that's it. Do you have any other ending thoughts? I think that we covered them.
Yeah, if you want seat time by a Z.
Yeah, seat time by a Z. I would say also keep the engine as stock as humanly possible.
You want to see the engine just to see how stock it actually is?
Sure.
People have accused me of all kinds of things.
You got nitrous, bro?
But like,
whoa, no, you chromed it, bro. That's chrome.
Bro. So,
and you have an aftermarket cap.
Yeah, that adds something. So it has a plenum spacer, and that's it.
How much is the plenum spacer good for?
I had like probably 5 horsepower. Probably nothing.
Yeah. Is it a kind of
It's a Nishimoto radiator, stock fans with like a shroud that's half destroyed.
Cool. Any oil cooler?
No oil cooler, stock power steering cooler. I run no thermostat. That seems to help it stay cool.
Very cool.
But it's basically...
That was a pun. Sorry.
Yeah.
Dad joke.
Eric officially can do this now.
Stock engine with fancy suspension.
Very cool. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Boom. End of episode. And it is time to thank those sponsors and everyone else. But first, if you want to come into Gulf Greyhound Park for the last Gulf Greyhound Park
ever event. Come out March 20th and 21st at Gulf Greyhound Park, Lone Star Drift, blah, blah, blah. Be there, last event ever there. And thank you to all the sponsors such as Valino Tires, BC Racing Coilovers, Spec, GK Tech, NK Wheels, ECU Master, NRG, and What Monsters Do. We can't do it without you guys. Thank you so much. And thank you to the spectators, the drivers, the fans, the YouTube people, everyone. And especially this time, thank you to the Patreon subscribers over at patreon.com/Lone Star Drift. Let's name those guys out. It's Dad's Hurt, John Yim, Alex Pereskevs, Mark Williams, Paul Ferguson, Joe Guomo, I don't know, and True Taylor. Thank you so much, guys. You guys help feed Sci-Fam, our video guy. It's really expensive to put together all this content. We have professional cameramen and stuff. Thank you so much for helping out. I hope you enjoy the channel. Thanks.